Hello there everybody, Scotia here with a very interesting video for today because last night, or last night as of the timing of this recording, Street Fighter V and Street Fighter VI director Takayuki Nakayama pretty much did a Twitter Q&A where he basically just responded to a bunch of people asking questions about certain characters, what's this character up to, what's this character up to, and while I'm obviously not going to, cover every answer that was given, throughout all these Twitter questions, there are definitely a few, I really want to talk about because, like I said, there was some really interesting stuff here, some very confusing stuff, some stuff that was said that I kind of don't really get the mindset over, but, we'll cover them, in a bit. But yeah, that's pretty much just what this video is going to be. It's going to be me kind of going over what I think are the most interesting, bits of information that come out from all of these tweets, and just my takes on them and my feelings in terms of, the responses, the tone of the responses, stuff like that, kind of analysing all that stuff. So yeah, without further ado, let's just get straight into it. So all of this started when El Chacote on Twitter pretty much just asked this random question about, what's Peter doing, from Street Fighter V. If you don't remember, Peter was basically just a meme character. He showed up for one scene in the cinematic story for Street Fighter V. He was fightable for some reason, you fought him in the story. And yeah, he was just a pretty standard Brazilian beat cop. There was not a lot to him. I don't think there was ever intended to be anything to him, but he kind of became a bit of a meme. A lot of people start kind of bigging him up, and I've even seen some people, perhaps unironically, perhaps ironically, say that they want Peter playable, which I think is just, personally, I think that's just one of the stupidest things, to be honest. With so many characters, not in Street Fighter 6, Peter of all characters would just be such a waste, but that's neither here nor there. So obviously I'm not going to talk too much about this, because I just, I'll be blunt, I don't really care about Peter at all. Like I said, he's a meme. But yeah, for some reason, Nakayama answered this question and basically just said, yeah, Peter, he retired after, his role in Street Fighter V's cinematic story. He's got 3 sons, the oldest of which became a police officer, and he's retired and plays beach volleyball. So for all the Peter heads out there, you've got an update. More of an update that we've gotten for pretty much, half the Street Fighter cast at this point. Probably more than half the Street Fighter cast at this point. So, I guess we have to embrace this Peter lore drop while we can. So from this point on, Nakayama basically got asked a ton of questions by a ton of people. I asked about 4 questions, 4 or 5. Unfortunately, I didn't get a response to any of them, but it is what it is. A lot of people were asking them stuff, so it's understandable. I tried to kind of organise these in the order that he said them, not for any real particular reason outside of just, having them in a neat order or something, but, all these questions and all these answers were so fragmented, they were replied to under different posts. So it's just all over the place. So these are going to be in a fairly random order, and obviously, like I said at the start, I'm not going to cover all of these. Some of these were really minor, what's Manat doing, what's Mika doing, and they're just kind of general things. I don't really have a lot to say about those types of responses. It's cool to see, and I'm glad he answered them, but I just don't really have much to say personally. So this first one here is in response to a question somebody asked about Gen. What's Gen doing? Because the last we saw Gen in Street Fighter V, it kind of looked like Akuma killed him, and that was kind of it. He randomly showed up in, I think, Akuma's character story. Akuma, bodied him in about 2 seconds, and Gen was kind of just left laying there, and it was never really clarified what really happened. Was Gen dead? What happened? I think what also kind of helped people think that Gen was dead was that a lot of concept art of potential characters was kind of being released around this time or beforehand of Gen's apprentice as a possible character. So I think the idea that Capcom was sort of looking to replace Gen was something that kind of was in people's minds, that to make them think that Gen was dead. But nope, Nakayama has confirmed the opposite. Gen is still active. He's still alive. Yeah. I'm kind of not surprised. I'm surprised but not surprised, if that makes sense. It was a weird way for Gen to go out if that was how Gen was going to go out. I think it's kind of a bit of a disservice to the character. And, I say this as somebody who's not a big Gen fan. I mean, I don't hate him. I've just never really liked him. He's just always kind of been there. He's one of those characters that's just yeah, it's Gen. Gen's Gen. But I think, killing Gen off in a game where he's not even playable, that's just disrespectful, man. I think that'd be such a shitty way to do it, for any character, not just Gen, to have this character go, hey, this character's dead, but they weren't even playable. I think if you wanted to kill Gen off, I think you would definitely have to make him playable, kind of give him a big, not send off, but just kind of kind of go all in on Gen. How do I make Gen, this version of Gen, the best possible version of him ever, you know, just kind of go all out on it. And then I think story-wise, how I would probably do it is I would have him have a big fight with Akuma, like just a massive, massive fight with Akuma, and I would actually have Gen win. I would have Gen beat Akuma. Sorry, Akuma fans, you know, he still takes nothing but L's. I'll get to that in a second, though. Yeah, but I would have Gen win, and then this kind of moment where, like, Akuma's just like, I think they both know, like, Gen kind of went too far, and has, like, minutes left to live, so Akuma's just like, you know what, I respect it. I'm just gonna go and, like, let you die in peace, and then Gen kind of just dies, I guess, you know. But I think, in all honesty, I did a video on this. It was a very rambly video, but I did a video on death in fighting games and how after, you know, M. Bison and Heihachi coming back, it just means nothing at this point. Like, there's no impact, because, you know, at some point these characters are going to come back. Obviously, there's another question and another answer that I might, like, talk a bit more detail about this in a second. Yeah, so, like, I just don't see the point in, like, killing off Gen, because there'll be somebody out there who's a Gen fan or a Gen main who won't want that character to die. It's just the way, you know, fighting games are. I mean, you know, M. Bison fans were incensed at the idea that, hey, maybe Bison could skip this game, like skip Street Fighter 6. Maybe he doesn't have to come back straight away, but obviously, you know, we lost that one, so it is what it is. But yeah, like I said, I'm not too shocked, because, I don't know, I just don't really see any Street Fighter character just ever fully being like, this character is dead, you know, unless they were, like, not playable. Obviously, like, I think, like, Gotetsu is probably, like, a safe bet that that character is dead. I think if Gotetsu comes back, then I think Akuma is the biggest fraud on earth, because Akuma's, like, only real confirmed kill at this point is Gotetsu. But yeah, I think with somebody like Gen, like a character who has been playable in the past, like, multiple times, yeah, I don't see him ever being killed off, because that's a playstyle that, you know, unless you're willing to completely replace that playstyle, which you never know, they may do. They may be completely fine with, you know, replacing that playstyle with a new character. Yeah, I just don't see it, because there's history there, there's favorites there. I just don't really see the point at this point anymore. Like, if Bison, you know, coming back so easily is a thing that happened, which, you know, it did happen, there's just no weight or impact, really. It's like, well, like, what's the point? Like, if Bison can come back, then, like, why can't Gen, you know? So this segues nicely into the next tweet I have lined up, where in response to, you know, the confirmation that Gen is still alive and active, the person asking this question hopes that this means that Charlie Nash isn't dead either. And Nakayama responds with a very interesting quote here that says, "Everything that happens once can never happen again, but everything that happens twice will surely happen a third time." Now, I think this is obviously referencing, you know, Charlie's many deaths. So everything that happens once can never happen again. So, you know, Charlie died once, but everything that happens twice will surely happen a third time. So Charlie has died twice, which means if he's died once and he's died twice, the chances are he can probably die a third time. So I don't think this is like a direct confirmation that, like, oh, you know, every game that Charlie is in, he's going to die at the end. Maybe it does, I don't know. But I think this is like a kind of tongue-in-cheek, well, not really tongue-in-cheek, this is a kind of sly way of saying, like, yeah, Nash is probably going to come back. Which, you kind of like what I was talking about earlier, you might as well. You know, I like Nash a lot, or Charlie, I prefer calling him Charlie, but I'm so used to Street Fighter 5 always referring to him as Nash. But yeah, like, I'm honestly fine with Nash coming back, you know, from the dead a second time. Like, you know, kind of like what I was saying earlier, like, with all this shit with Bison, like, who cares, you know? Like, you know, kind of like the point I made in that video I was talking about earlier, that I made, like, death in fighting games mean nothing. It's like, yeah, they mean nothing, and to be honest, they should probably stick that way, because it's more fun, I guess, you know. Like, you know, all these fighting games keep killing off these characters just to bring them back, and it's just like, you know, maybe just don't kill them off in the first place. Like, we didn't really need to kill off Charlie. I mean, it made sense for the story. It's just the kind of downside with, you know, Charlie dying in Street Fighter 5 is that within 30 seconds it meant nothing. So it just kind of, you know, the whole thing just kind of fell flat. And then, you know, it meant even less when Bison came back in 6. So, you know, it kind of feels a bit unfair to Charlie that, like, he died for absolutely nothing, you know, but he should stay dead. No, fuck that, you know. Like I said, I think Bison and Heihachi coming back, like, pretty much, like, right after the other is just kind of like, it's kind of like opened my mind to just like, man, there's like deaths in these games just means nothing. Like, these characters are always going to come back if the demand is there, if, you know, if people want them hard enough, if people ask for them hard enough. Like, Gen will come back eventually if people ask for him enough. Nash will come back if people ask for him enough, you know? I mean, fuck, I know I just said about Gotetsu, but like, Gotetsu could probably come back if enough people you know, want him, but I don't think many people really even know he exists, so, you know, it's whatever. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting how Nakayama pretty much just outright said, like, yeah, Nash can probably come back a third time, like, it's not really that big of a deal. And to be honest, it isn't. Like, old me would have been like, this is silly, you're making this death mean nothing, but his death was so, like, kind of poorly done. Not the death itself, like, the moment and the sacrifice was great. Like I said, it's just within 30 seconds, it's just established that him dying and sacrificing himself meant absolutely nothing. And even though it eventually somewhat kind of led to Bison dying, he's back in 6 anyway, so it just didn't matter. So it's like, yeah, you might as well just bring Nash back, like, why not? Speaking of why not, we have our next tweet lined up ready here. This is about Evil Ryu / Kage and if they still exist somewhere. And Nakayama's response is, Kage is supposed to have disappeared in the story in Street Fighter V. Kage can no longer exist because Ryu overcame Satsui no Hado, but the funny thing is you will never know what will happen. And that last line in particular, it tickles me, man, because again, it's just like, who gives a fuck? Like, if we want Evil Ryu or Kage back, like, we'll find a reason to bring them back, like, don't worry, we don't care. Like, you know, it's that's just how that reads to me. It's just like, yeah, Kage's done, he literally shouldn't exist anymore, but fuck it, if we find a reason to bring him back, we'll bring him back, because it's Evil Ryu, and Evil Ryu's popular, because Shotos are popular, you know. Maybe not in this game, maybe we'll actually finally be free from Evil Ryu for at least one game, we'll have to see, but yeah, 100% Kage will come back eventually because, you know, again, it's a character, it's a playstyle, people liked him, people played him, it's kind of tough to get rid of that and just go cold turkey. I mean, then again, they've done it with other characters, like I'm still waiting for Sean and Necro and Remy, etc., but you never know. I think in terms of Kage though, I don't know, I think my biggest issue with Kage was that, like, it was just Evil Ryu, like, they didn't even remotely try. I think the concept of, like, this is kind of the personification of the Satsui no Hado that was within Ryu, I think is a cool concept, and it's cool that you kind of like can canonize Evil Ryu and go, hey, this is a thing that actually exists, like we can kind of go back to this if need be, like separating it. So it's like we've always had like these storylines like Ryu fighting the Satsui no Hado, but by the end of 5 and obviously 3 and 6, like that's over with, like he's done, he's beat it, it's over with. But you know, do we necessarily have to get rid of the concept of, you know, the Satsui no Hado that was in Ryu, I mean? And you know, no, we didn't have to get rid of it, and I think that's why, as a concept, I think Kage can be interesting. It's just the fact that he still looked like Ryu, and like they just took Evil Ryu and just like gave him little fangs and little horns and was like, there you go, that's our personification of the Satsui no Hado within Ryu. And it just felt so lazy to me. I think honestly, visually, like visual design wise, I think it would have been better. I mean, maybe not better, but I would have found it more interesting if they'd kind of maybe gone for like an Omen from Killer Instinct route, just kind of making somebody that just literally looks like they are made up of energy, you know. Obviously still have like the playstyle and the Evil Ryu stuff, but like just visually, like I think making him just Ryu but with like little fangs and horns, I think was so lame. I think that was one of the main reasons why I just hated Kage. I hated Kage for that reason. Playstyle wise he was alright, but I just couldn't stand that they barely tried. I'm open to Kage coming back, but if he comes back and he's just Ryu still, then that would just be so lame. Now this one's kind of interesting for a couple of reasons, because this person asks for an update on Balrog and Cody, and Nakayama kind of just, it wasn't a throwaway line, but it was just kind of like, hey, you know, if you saw him in World Tour, like in the Bison update, he's just still doing that, he's still doing Balrog things. The really interesting part though was about Cody, because Nakayama says that Cody is travelling overseas on business with Guy while continuing to be the mayor of Metro City. Now there's two things here for each character that, you know, I want to talk about. Cody travelling overseas on business with Guy. I have always kind of thought, you know, Cody had a very good chance to be in this game. I believe Nakayama said a while ago, I may, you know, need to have a look at the source again, but I believe Nakayama said that apparently Cody almost made the roster for Street Fighter 6, like at launch. I think he's always had like a really good chance, but I don't know, to me this kind of seems like an excuse for why Cody isn't going to be in the game like for a while. Like I think Cody will be in 6 eventually, but at this point I'm kind of thinking like he might show up like later in the game, like later in the game's life, like season 4 or 5 or however, you know, many seasons we get to, because yeah, this kind of just reads like a reason as to why Cody isn't in Metro City. Like, obviously, at any moment they can go, okay, Cody's back, so we can just kind of do that. But the fact he's gone, it's like, okay, we're not using Cody yet, but we will eventually, so he's just off screen to the left. But if we need him, we can pull him back in. That's how that reads to me. With Guy, though, it's interesting because, one of my biggest issues with Kimberly, and I like Kimberly, she's a cool character, but her relationship to Bushin Ryu and to Guy, who's her master, and this is kind of like further covered in like a future tweet, her like link to that is so hollow to me because there's just nothing. You don't see her history with Bushin Ryu, don't see her history with Guy. Obviously she explains it, but there's no connection there, you know, like there's no real link. Like I don't feel that Kimberly and Guy have that master and student bond because it's just not there. And it's interesting to me that kind of like Kimberly is this Bushin Ryu, you know, ninja and a potential successor and all this stuff to the style and the master, and it's just like, so where's Guy and all this? I've been thinking to myself like the whole time since Kimberly's been revealed, like, oh, where's Guy? Like, how's her relationship to Guy? How does it work? How does it look? And it's just, it doesn't just, because Guy's just gone. He's just not with Kimberly. He's with Cody overseas, and it's like, I don't know, it's just weird to me. It's just weird to me that they kind of have Kimberly be the student to Guy, and he's just not around. Like they're just not together. Like, is she still training under Guy? It's very unclear, and that's one of the things that it's kind of always bothered me. I have a similar thing with Jamie and Young and Yang. You know, he's so like basically like a lot of Jamie as a person and his, you know, responsibilities and his beliefs and the way he sees things is based on Young and Yang, and that's cool. I like that, but there's just nothing from Young and Yang's end. Like, how do they see, you know, Jamie? Obviously, these are things that could be answered by them, you know, being playable, but like, I don't know, that's one of the issues I have with World Tour in Street Fighter 6 in general, is that like, almost every like relationship in the game is very one-sided. We only get one character's point of view of it, and we don't get the other, and I think it makes a lot of these relationships really hollow to me. It's like, I don't see Kimberly as a student of Guy because we've seen nothing of her interacting with Guy. We just hear her talk about it. We don't see or hear Guy's perspective. And I think it's one of the reasons why Aki works really well, because you see, you can talk to Fang, you see Fang, and you see Fang's perspective. Like, what's his side of that dynamic like? And it, you know, it's great because Aki is obsessed with Fang, but Fang doesn't really care. He's just, you know, straight to business. He's just, you know, she's being silly and obsessive. These are traits she needs to get rid of. But, you know, Aki's just like, I worship the ground you work on. It's great. And it's why Aki, you know, it's why I think Aki is like probably the best newcomer in the game, because you've linked her to another character and have actually, you know, gone deeper into that relationship and shown how that works on both sides. And they just haven't done that for the other characters. So that's just like a mini rant aside, and this, you know, seeing this thing about it, just, you know, seeing Guy and hearing that Guy's just not even with Kimberly at the moment, it's just like, you know, what is their relationship? What is their dynamic? Like, is Kimberly training under Guy? Like, is Guy, like, moved on? Like, is he, you know, it's so weird. Yeah, I think it's just really not handled well. So I'll actually use this to like springboard onto the next tweet, which is kind of further going in on Guy in the Bushin Ryu, where somebody asks if Guy is, you know, the Grandmaster of the Bushin Ryu now that Zeku has went off to make the Strider clan. And Nakayama confirms that yes, Guy is indeed the Grandmaster of the Bushin Ryu currently. But this is the part that's interesting and kind of like links to what I was just saying. Because apparently Nakayama says that Guy is succeeded by an apprentice named Go, who in turn is succeeded by his son Sho, Ginzu the Ninja. For those that don't know, Ginzu the Ninja, I believe, is a character from Captain Commando, which is like set in like a futuristic Metro City, like way in the future. This was a thing that was kind of referenced earlier. I believe one of Kimberly's World Tour artworks references or kind of has a cameo of Go and his link to, you know, Captain Commando. And yeah, this is kind of just like I was saying, it links in. It's just like, so Kimberly is Guy's student, but then you throw in this completely other new, you know, Bushin Ryu ninja who, like, are they Guy's students? What's the link? Like, you know, he's succeeded by an apprentice named Go, so is Go an apprentice of Guy as well? Is Guy training two different ninjas at the same time, Kimberly and Go? And I don't know, it just kind of feels a bit weird because, you know, they've kind of just done this, and it's not just Kimberly that's kind of, you know, kind of getting screwed over because, you know, this is confirmation Kimberly will never be a Grandmaster of the Bushin Ryu. Maybe she succeeds Go, I don't know, it's entirely possible, but, you know, at the very least, she doesn't directly, you know, succeed Guy. And the other one is Maki. Like, Maki's whole thing was like, my old master was, you know, Genryusai, I think his name was, like, you know, he's my father, so it's my birthright, I should lead it. And that's her kind of like little feud with Guy. She gets completely screwed over with this. Like, so Maki never will, you know, succeed. Maybe she gets it, but, you know, she doesn't get it from Guy, which was like the whole point of that feud, is that she you know, she believes that she deserves it more than Guy. So I guess she didn't, you know, Maki didn't deserve it more than Guy. Like, she didn't earn it enough, I guess. And then, you know, this is kind of, again, it's just a minor thing, and this is one of those things, little things that irk me, that like 99% of people won't give a shit about. But I know, you know, Street Fighter has had this shared universe for a long time now, and 5 kind of like went off in a, you know, kind of a very hard direction by, you know, bringing in Strider into the universe. Like, Strider is now part of the Street Fighter universe, and now Captain Commando is. And I think, you know, like, obviously, like I said, like Captain Commando's setting was like futuristic Metro City, so it was always kind of obvious. But I don't know, I kind of feel like this needs to kind of like expand the Street Fighter universe to include all these different franchises. I know part of me kind of thinks like it's starting to kind of negatively affect the actual Street Fighter characters. Like Kimberly, like, what is Kimberly's purpose now? Like, she's never going to succeed Guy. She's just, you know, she doesn't even really have a relationship with Guy. And Maki as well. Like, Maki, like, a really liked character. Obviously, a lot of people like. I would love Maki back. I think Maki's awesome. Like, her whole thing kind of just up in smoke now. It doesn't really matter anymore. So it's just a shame. And I kind of, it's a little thing where it's like making everything shared and linked, and, you know, so we're all together in this one little universe. I don't know. I don't know. I think it's cool, but I think when you get aspects like this where it's kind of like, did we really need to sacrifice Kimberly and Maki just so we can get like a Captain Commando nod? It's, you know, it's arguable. You know, some people may feel like it's worth it. I don't really know. So, speaking of the wider Street Fighter universe, it's time to talk about Akira, because this person asks about Akira and what they're up to, and Nakayama's response is so weird. I'm going to try my best to kind of break it down, but it's odd. So Nakayama says, I wonder what's going on. It would be nice to contemplate, though of course the worlds are connected. She was a guest in Street Fighter V, so I don't know much more than that. So the main thing, so not the main thing, but the first thing I want to point out, she was a guest in Street Fighter V. I've heard this wording before, in one of the, I can't remember what the book was called, but shortly before Street Fighter 6 came out, Capcom put out a big book for Street Fighter 5, and like, it was all in Japanese, so like, I kind of had to do like my own wonky like machine translations to kind of like figure out what was being said, and even then I probably missed some stuff. But Nakayama and, you know, Capcom as a whole, they outwardly call Akira a guest. Obviously, Akira from Rival Schools, she was one of the last characters added to Street Fighter V, and it pretty much brought in, you know, Rival Schools fully into the Street Fighter universe. It was always kind of was, because Sakura is in one of the Rival Schools games, so, you know, there was always that link. But, you know, now it's kind of like fully, like, it was fully confirmed by Akira, you know, being in Street Fighter V. So, you know, the guest name, yeah, she is a guest, kind of, like, she's a guest from Rival Schools, but, you know, it's a weird wordage, and I no doubt it probably might throw some people off. The rest of this, though, is so odd, because he says, I wonder what's going on, it would be nice to contemplate, I don't know much more than that. My only real response here is, like, Nakayama, like, you make the fucking games, bro, like, what do you mean you don't know? What do you mean you know, the wording of this makes it sound like it's like a Terry or Mai thing. Like, if somebody asked him, like, you know, if this was like Street Fighter 7, and somebody is like, what's Terry and Mai doing? This is the response I would expect for that, because they don't have no control over what Terry and Mai are doing. Like, it was a one-time guest thing. Like, this is a character that Capcom owns. Like, Rival Schools is now connected to Street Fighter, like, fully. You should know, like, what is Akira doing? You should know, and he's acting like, it's so, this was one of the weirdest answers. I genuinely had no idea what he meant by this. The wording of it was so odd. Yeah, like, dude, like, you make the game, like, you should know what, like, one of the characters your company owns is doing. Bizarre. I don't know what this was about. Sorry to the Akira fans, who were expecting an actual, like, honest answer, because this was just complete nonsense. Like, I honestly have no idea what he was trying to say here. Speaking of I have no idea what he was trying to say here, we get another question here from Chakotay, who basically asks about G. Like, what happened to G? Because this is one of the weirdest things about Street Fighter, like, 6 coming from 5, is that G was added roughly about halfway into Street Fighter V's life, and from the point he was added, the game kind of became about him. And Like Capcom have said that like G is technically the main villain of 5. It's arguable. Some people flat out don't believe that, which I think is completely fair. I see it, but I also don't see it. I think it's Bison and G. If anything, I think it's the both of them. I think Bison was the main villain for the first half of the game, and I think G was kind of the main villain for the rest, or the antagonist, or something like that. Yeah, so he was like built up a lot, you know, throughout the rest of Street Fighter 5 from Season 3 onwards, and then we get to Street Fighter 6 and there's just nothing, like there's not a single thing. Like the only reference to G, I believe, in Street Fighter 6 is he's in the back of an artwork of like Guile getting his hair cut. He's on like a poster, like an Uncle Sam type poster, which is also like G's kind of gimmick, like Uncle Sam Lincoln type thing. Yeah, one of the most baffling things about Street Fighter 6's story to me is how they build up that story like crazy in Street Fighter 5 and then just completely dropped it in 6. And it's even weirder because Nakayama's response to this question about G says, "It is very difficult to describe him, but there is a deep story like the one involved in Q that I hope to be able to tell one day. Once again, my brother in Christ, you make the game. You could have told this story already. Like, we could have been deep in the story. We could have had G or Q or both in this game already. But they're not. That's not the story. The story is, hey, Bison's back. Like, what? Like, what do you mean like, you want to tell the story one day? You have the chance to do it. You've always had the chance to do it. And this has, hands down, been one of my biggest gripes with Street Fighter 6. Is that for the first time in 25 years since Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, we finally got a Street Fighter game that is not a prequel. You didn't have to build towards anything. For the first time in 25 years, you guys had an open road to do whatever you wanted. And what did you do? You brought back Bison. That was the first thing you did. By your own admission, like they have, both of them, Nakayama and Matsumoto, have openly said the plan from the start for Street Fighter 6 was to bring back Bison. You can't sit here now that he's back and go, yeah, I would love to tell the story about, you know, G and Q. You know, it's a really cool story. I love G a lot. It's like, dude, you fucking had the chance to do that. You could have done that. We could have been in it right now. Like, what do you mean you, like, it boggles my mind. Like, just trying to understand the logic of Capcom at this point is just like, genuinely makes my brain hurt. It just makes, like, this makes no sense. Like, dude, you make the game. Like, you could have done this. We could have been in this story, but you know, you wanted Bison to come back straight away. You wanted to undo that death. You spent the first half of Street Fighter 5 building up and making Bison's death a big deal to just immediately undo it. But you had the last half of Street Fighter 5 building up G and this, like, threat against the world and the apocalypse, and then you just do nothing with it, and now you want to, like, dude, it makes me so fucking mad. It blows my mind. Yeah, this one, I saw this and I was just like, what the hell? Like, what, like, dude, what do you mean? Like, you make the game, like, this could have been the story. And that's the thing, Street Fighter 6, I think the same as Street Fighter 5, as far as I know, there is no credited writer. There is no singular writer, or there is no, you know, like, team of writers. We don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe there is a singular writer. Maybe there is a team of writers. We don't know because they've never been credited. So the assumption of, at least on my part, I think other people I've seen online have said this as well, the assumption is that Nakayama is the one writing all this stuff because he's the one that always talks about the lore. Like, this isn't the first time he's done Twitter Q&As like this. Like, dude, you write the stories, you write the characters. Like, we could have been in this storyline. Like, what do you mean? Like, I hope to be able to tell one day. Like, we could have done this. I don't know. I was like, this one left me speechless. I couldn't believe it. Like, what do you mean you want to get to it one day? Like, we could have been here. But you guys wanted to bring back Bison. So far, next one, somebody asked about Necali. Don't worry, I'm just as shocked as you that somebody asked about Necali in 2025. And Nakayama's first line here made me cry laughing. He said, "Thanks for liking him." I think it's pretty well known, even at Capcom at this point, that, you know, Necali shit-bombed as a character. It was extremely unpopular. I like the concept. I like, you know, his gimmick. I just think story-wise, he was such a nothing character. But, you know, I think it's funny that, like, Nakayama was like, oh, you know, thank you, like, you know, thank you that somebody actually likes Necali. The rest of this is very interesting, though, because he says, Necali is the embodiment of Satsui no Hado equals psycho power. We'll get back to that. So he can exist in any time period. During SF5, the power of darkness was stronger than ever, so he appeared in the form of a warrior from prehistoric times. So I can't remember if it was ever really said that Necali was like the embodiment of the Dark Hado and all that. I've kind of always felt like that. I don't know why. Maybe that was just my headcanon to kind of make Necali like work a bit better, or maybe it was always a thing. I honestly don't even remember at this point. So that's not too surprising to me. I think it's cool, and like I said, I think as a concept, Necali is cool. I think as well, what's very interesting here is saying that, you know, during Street Fighter V, obviously, like, that was probably the closest the world has come in, like, throughout the series, the closest the world has come to, like, actually, like, falling apart, and, you know, Bison winning was, I think the closest he got was in 5. I think Alpha was probably the next closest after that. So, you know, like, it makes sense that, you know, it was a very dark time. But the wording here says, so he appeared in the form of a warrior from prehistoric times. So kind of like what I was talking about with Kage, where it's like, my kind of idea for Kage, you know, was to make him kind of like made up of energy. Like he doesn't have a real physical form almost. He's like a concept kind of. I think this is kind of what they're implying that Necali is that like the Necali we see in Street Fighter V, like that's not his like default look. Like that's not how he will. That's not how he always looked. I think that's just the form he decided to take for some reason. I think it's an interesting concept because I think you can definitely bring back Necali and like have him be completely different, like just completely different visual design, just in every way, just completely change him up and go, hey, here's Necali, but this is like a different like reincarnation of Necali. A cool theory I had once was that Bosch in Street Fighter 6 was a kind of like reincarnation of Necali. I thought that could have been interesting. You know, something like Oob in Dragon Ball Z for all the Dragon Ball fans, where Oob is the reincarnation of Kid Buu from the Buu saga, who was reincarnated so that Goku, you know, can get his fight with him, so that, you know, he could be good this time and Goku can fight him and not have to worry about the world, you know, blowing up. But yeah, I thought, you know, that could have been an interesting way to go about it. Was like, you know, hey, like Necali died and then he came back, but he was reborn as Bosch. That could happen. That could be the case. You never know. We'll see how it goes. But I think it definitely leaves the door open for Necali, who was a character that prior to this I was convinced he was never coming back, because I can't think of a character that bombed harder like in recent times. That was supposed to be like a big deal. Like you know, they really fucked up with Necali. So, you know, I'd be interested in seeing him get another chance. You know, maybe they completely change him up. The only other real interesting part of this is the little brackets here where Nakayama says that Necali is the embodiment of the Satsui no Hado, and then he has in brackets here equals Psycho Power. So is he implying that Psycho Power is the same as the Satsui no Hado? Interesting. Really don't know what the implications are for that. That raises a lot of questions. We'll have to see how it goes. I know they kind of, with Sagat, they implied that, or if not outright confirmed, I don't know, it's been a while, but they did a thing with Sagat where they kind of established, like, hey, like, the Satsui no Hado, like, it isn't just linked to, you know, Ansatsuken practitioners, like, it's anybody who's basically at the peak of their fighting style, or the peak of their strength, like, they can, you know, they can succumb to it too, which is, like, why Sagat was starting to, like, succumb to it as well. So, you know, maybe that's how it's linked, is that, you know, Psycho Power is a kind of offshoot, like maybe a different type of mastered Satsui no Hado. It's certainly interesting. You know, it would be nice if Street Fighter 6 covered it, but with the way the story is, I doubt it. But yeah, so overall, yeah, pretty interesting tweet. So this next one made me laugh because somebody asked about the Illuminati / Secret Society and Gil, and like, are they still active? I would love to see them again. And Nakayama's response is, there's a bit about them in Rashid's story, and they have a sign in Beat Square in Metro City, so they must be active. And this kind of made me laugh because, like, this is literally, like, the only two things in the entirety of Street Fighter 6 that, like, reference the Secret Society. You know, it just tickles me. It's like, yeah, like, they're definitely active. Here's the only two examples in the game of them being active. I don't know. It just tickled me because it's just that, like, man, like, dire state for the Secret Society in this game. Like, you know, the previous game, Street Fighter 3, like, they were the dominant faction. You know, Gil had finally revealed himself and was making his moves. Where are they in Street Fighter 6? Oh, they're on a billboard. Like, come on, man. So yeah, that kind of made me laugh. There's nothing else I can really say about this. It's just sad, really, you know. I'll kind of talk about a bit more about it later with another tweet. But yeah, man, I think this storyline's done. At the very least, it's done in Street Fighter 6. Like, they're not touching this storyline. Maybe in a future game they can do it, but yeah, man, like, the fact that, like, this is, like, the only, like, hey, you know, they're active, here's the only two examples of them being active, and they're both, like, extremely minor. I will admit, the Rashid link was cool. I remember saying that when I saw that in, when I did Rashid's World Tour stuff. You know, I thought that was really cool, and that was a cool link to kind of, like, move Rashid away from, you know, because he's kind of not really got anything to do with Shadlu anymore. Like, maybe he can have a fight with Fang or Aki, but, like, kind of main plot wise, there's nothing else really there for him. So I thought it'd be a cool way to kind of like move him towards, you know, Gil and like being against Gil in the Secret Society. But, you know, so that is cool, but like I said, it's very minor. It's more just like a, hey, here's something we can do with Rashid, but we're probably not going to do it anytime soon. And the billboard is just like, that's just so like, that's just like an Easter egg. Like, that's not an actual, like, you know, like, you can say it's like, oh, this is a sign that they're active. It's just like, it's a billboard. Like, that doesn't even have any new art. It's just Yun's ending from Third Strike just blown up on a billboard. Like, you know, so nothing. Like, there's nothing tangible with the Secret Society or Gil or Urien or anybody in Street Fighter 6. It's just sad. So yeah, that was kind of it, really. There's literally nothing else to go off on this. It's just, yeah, there's nothing new here. It's just, yep, the shitty things that have been hidden in 6 since the start are still the only things for the Secret Society. Yippee. Now, to my pleasant surprise, we got a tweet of all things about 12, because somebody, this amazing person, Santi, asked about 12, which is also because not enough people ask about 12. Unfortunately though, Nakayama's response is about as nothing as you would expect. He says, I wonder what happened to them, they have a very frightening background, you know. Dude, you might as well have just not replied to this. Like, this is so nothing. Like, there's no new info here, like, what happened to 12? I don't know, says the guy directing the game. Oh my god, man. Yeah, so this is just, you know, obviously 12's chances were in the toilet anyway, like, rock bottom, like, he was, like, there was no way he was making it in this game. But I think, you know, Nakayama's response to 12 being like, I wonder what happened to them, it just, to me, it screams, like, I don't know, I don't give a shit. You know, I don't know what happened to him. Like, I've not thought about what happened to him. Like, who cares? It's 12. It's like, yeah, it's about what I expected from Capcom. They have a very frightening background, you know. Cool, yeah, they do, but it'd be nice if it was explored a bit, or, you know, we saw more of him, but that's it, I guess. So, yeah, it's a, I mean, I was going to say it's a crumb, but it's barely a crumb. It's like a quarter of a crumb. It's like a flake of fucking bread. Just like, here you go. Here's a little dot of something to feed on. But yeah, I mean, it was still cool that, you know, somebody from Capcom acknowledged 12 in 2025, but yeah, this was just such a non-answer. Speaking of non-answers, somebody asked about Dudley. Is Dudley doing okay? What's he up to? And Nakayama's only response, he didn't even bother saying any words. He just posted a picture of like Dudley's one cameo in Street Fighter 6 in one of Kami's World Tour artworks. Oh, just Dudley with his exact same Street Fighter 3 design, sitting in the back of a cafe with Ortho K. Gotch's butler, and just a teapot emoji. Yeah, this is just the most basic thing of like, hey, here's Dudley, he's just the same, thanks. Yeah, this was nothing, like, you know, again, like similar to 12, you just might as well have not said anything, because this is just nothing, like, there's nothing to go off here. It's like, yeah, like his cameo, like that cameo in the artwork in World Tour is cool, but like, doesn't look any different. The exact same design, like hasn't aged a day, you know, okay. But yeah, there's nothing else for me to really go off here. It's just like, hey, it's just this one picture from Street Fighter 6. I don't know, maybe just me being a bit of an idiot, but it just kind of rose me the wrong way a bit, where it's just like, hey, how's Dudley doing? And it's just like, well, here's his picture. Clearly you can see how he's doing. Why would you ask this? Like, you can play World Tour, and it's just like, dude, it's one static image of him in the background with the exact same design. Like, this tells us nothing. But whatever, you know, it's a Street Fighter 3 character, so, you know, I'm not surprised. It's pretty much a non-answer. So we're now on the last two tweets that I wanted to talk about today, and this one is somebody asking about any updates on Alex or Makoto. Would love to see at least one of them come back. And Nakayama's response is, yeah, it's about what I expected, because he says Alex is active in wrestling, and Makoto has taken over the Rindokan dojo and is active. So, you know, at least they're both active, then, you know, they're still fighting somewhere out there. And then he says they are similar in that they never neglect self-discipline. You know, it's not as bad as the Dudley and 12 tweets, because we, like, at least we got something here, but, yeah, I can't say I'm, like, happy with this response. Obviously, Alex, as many of you probably know, my favourite fighting game character of all time. I love Makoto as well, super sick character, one of the best to come out of Street Fighter 3. Yeah, this was just... It's just basic, like, there's nothing to really go off here. It's just like, yeah, Alex is active in wrestling. I'll talk about that, because that really rubs me the wrong way, in all honesty. Makoto's stuff is about what I expected. Like, there's nothing really shocking here. Like, we've kind of known for a while now that, you know, she was eventually going to take over the Rindokan Dojo after her dad died. I mean, her story in 3 and 4 was pretty much entirely based around that. So, you know, it's kind of like, it was the obvious kind of route to go with her, that, like, she fully takes over the dojo. Obviously, her third strike ending is her, like her work has paid off. She's got tons of people coming to try and fight her, and I believe there's a NPC in World Tour that even, you know, says like, hey, you know, there's this like Rindokan like master girl who runs this dojo who's crazy strong. People are, you know, keep going all over the world to fight her. So, you know, yeah, it's pretty standard. Like, it's not bad, but it's not like thrilling or anything. It's just, yeah, pretty bog standard. The Alex stuff though hurts because, I don't know, like, obviously Alex being a wrestler has always been like a key part of his character, but it was never just his character, you know? It was always Alex is a wrestler, not Alex the wrestler, if that makes sense. Like, there was more to him than that. It was just, that was his background, that was his origins because of, you know, being adopted by Tom and, you know, training under him. It was never his defining thing. It was just, he was just a wrestler. That was his fighting style. That was it. And you had all this other stuff, like his connections to the secret society, to Gil, to Yuri, and then Tom's relationship with Yuri and how they know each other. That was the intrigue. That was the real, like, meat and potatoes of Alex. And yeah, for him to just kind of just be like a throwaway line of like, yeah, Alex is active in wrestling. It's like this is a World Warrior like tournament winner. Like, he's the only character, unless they retcon it, which I fully, you know, would believe them to like end up retconning this. But like, there are only 2 characters in the entire series that have won like the main World Warrior tournament, and it's Ryu and Alex. And to go from Alex winning a World Warrior tournament to just like, yeah, he's active in wrestling, like, it's so disappointing. Like, but at the same time, it's just what I expected. Like, I've said for a while now, and I've thought for a while now, like, I just don't see them ever really doing that storyline. Like, the pretty much any storyline, but especially the main storyline of Street Fighter 3 Justice. Like, I don't see them ever really following it up, you know, because it's just, why would they? Like, they're clearly more interested in doing other stuff. Like, they don't really want to continue storylines that they had nothing to do with, that I'm sure in Capcom's eyes are still associated with the near death of the franchise. But it's just sad, you know, to go from where we left off Alex at the end of Third Strike, you know, he's going across the world, he's finding himself, he's finding his place in the world, he's finding his inner strength, and then he clashes with Ryu, and his eyes are opened, like, this is what true strength is. Like, I'm just in awe of this guy. Like, I want to fight him again. Like, I need to fight this guy again. Like, I'm not coming home until I've fought him. And it's like, the next game in the timeline, it's just like, oh yeah, I just went back to Metro City to wrestle. Like, it's so disappointing, but it's just, like I said, like, I've said on this, and I've said on Twitter as well, like, I'm just not surprised. Like, it's what I expected from modern Capcom, because they really went hard on the wrestling side of Alex in Street Fighter 5, because in all fairness, what else could they have done with him? I still, you know, while I'm glad Alex was in 5, and I think he's, you know, great in 5, you know, and I'm happy he was in that game, yeah, it just really hurt him, I think, because, like, story-wise, because it's just, there's not a lot you can do with Alex in a prequel to 3, because 3 established that, like, that was the first time he even left, you know, New York. That was the first time he left home to go travel across the world to hunt Gil down. So, you know, if you do a prequel to that in like a game that's all about traveling around the world and fighting, there's just not a lot you can really do. And there wasn't a lot that Alex did. He was glued to New York or Metro City, and that was all he could do, because there wasn't, you know, he couldn't leave that city, he couldn't leave that location, because he doesn't leave it until 3. So the only real thing they could do is like, well, he's just got to wrestle people, because he's a wrestler, which he is, but like there's nothing else he can do. Like, he can't go anywhere else, and it's just, yeah, it's just a shame. Like, that's all I can really say, to be honest. I mean, who knows, though? Maybe, you know, Nakayama's just being coy, and if Alex comes back in Street Fighter 6 at some point, maybe they'll do something with him that's a bit more than that. But at this point, I think if Alex is to come back in 6, I think his storyline is going to be like, yeah, I fought this Gil guy, you know, I beat him up, I got my revenge, I figured, you know, oh, there's more to life than just revenge, so I travelled the world a bit, and then now I'm in the wrestling circuit in Metro City, the end. That's basically what I expect from him, like at this point in 6, which is just depressing. I mean, it's cool to know that they're both still active and all that, but yeah, it was cool to see, but it didn't really, you know, give me much hope for the future for Alex. So we're finally onto our last tweet here, and it's about Necro and Effie, because this person asked basically what happened to them, what have they been doing? Because the last time we saw them in Third Strike, they were on the run from the Secret Society, and that was kind of it. Like, you know, we never got anything really from them in 4 or 5, outside of like very, very minute little hints here and there. Yeah, so it's just basically like, what happened to them? Are they still like, well, like, what are they doing now in Street Fighter 6? And I'll say this one for last because, as you can probably tell by the tweet on the screen, the last part of this is very interesting, and that's what I'm going to talk about mainly. But the first part I'll just get out of the way, because Nakayama's response to, you know, what happened to Necro and Effie is they must have succeeded in escaping from the Illuminati. And this is another one that kind of reads like 12s, where it's like, I don't know, like they must have escaped. I don't know, maybe I'm just reading it wrong, or maybe I'm reading too much into it. But just the wording of it is like they must have succeeded in escaping from the Illuminati. To me it reads like, I don't know, I've not thought about it. Like, I've not thought about what happened to them, so I assume like we've not done anything with them, so they must have just escaped and they're just somewhere. I don't know. I've never had the biggest hopes for Necro to be in this game, to be honest. I think the art style, like, while I think it would be awesome to see him in the art style, I don't know. I think it's too much of a challenge for Capcom. I don't think they have the guts to actually try and do Necro in this engine. I just don't think they want to even bother like trying to risk it, which is a shame because I think it'd be awesome. But you know, I don't think they're even going to bother doing it. So, you know, I never had the biggest hopes for him anyway. But like, yeah, to me this just reads like a deconfirmation. It's like, yeah, like we're probably not going to do anything with Necro, because it's just like I've just not really thought about it. I don't know. The most interesting part though is that Nakayama reveals that Effie was actually considered to be playable during Street Fighter V but was rejected. And this is really interesting, and this is such a shame because, man, that would have been awesome. I would have loved to have seen Effie in Street Fighter V. I think that would have been so cool. At the same time though, as Nakayama says afterwards, she was a very difficult character. Yeah, I don't envy them for trying to make Effie work and then ultimately, you know, failing. Like, I understand that. It's a tough task. Like, I wouldn't even really know how to begin actually, like, making Effie work, because we've never really heard much about her. Like, there's really a lot of unknowns about Effie. Like, all we really know is that she was experimented on, like Necro, but we never know what, you know, happened to her, like what her powers are, what's this, what's that. It's never really been said. So, you know, it's kind of like making that work and kind of like making a concept like from scratch basically and making it apply to this pre-existing character. It's tough, and you know, I don't blame them for eventually just going like, no, like this just isn't going to work. I do wonder though, because obviously he doesn't say when, you know, she was rejected, like at what part, like what season was, you know, she considered before ultimately being turned down. I do wonder though, because it's, I think it was when they were doing, by they I mean Capcom, when Capcom were doing like all those bios on like the CFN website, like they were doing them for like basically like every character that's ever been in anything with Street Fighter on it, or Final Fight. They did that, and like they did a bunch of bios, and they did one for Effie. I always, like, even back then I thought it was weird, because in that artwork she's got like a chainsaw or something. And I remember thinking at the time, like, why has she got a chainsaw? And like obviously like other people pointed this out. It's like, why has Effie got a chainsaw? Like, she never uses a chainsaw. Like, she never used one in Street Fighter 3. And now that this has been revealed, I think that kind of makes sense now. I think that may have been what they were intending. Like, that, like, maybe she was going to use a chainsaw at one point, like, as part of her kit. And then they were eventually like, no, that's not going to work. That's too stupid. That doesn't work. And then they eventually just, like, ended up, like, scrapping her. I don't know. It's just a side thing. Like, maybe that's what that was about. I mean, I always thought that was weird that she had a chainsaw. It just never, it never made sense. Like, of all the things, it's like, why has Effie got a chainsaw? Now I'm kind of like, maybe it was that, because that was, you know, the route they were considering going for when making her playable in Street Fighter V. I think the only other thing I want to theorize about is when she would have been in the game, because I was thinking about this last night after Nakayama tweeted this out, and I'm like when would they have done Effie? And of course this is pure theory, like I don't have any proof or evidence of this, but I kind of feel like she may have been intended for Season 2, because when you look at Season 2 of Street Fighter V, it was Akuma and 5 new characters, and the 5 new characters, they were all based on they were all linked to like other games in the series. So you had Ed, and Ed was obviously linked to Street Fighter 4 because that was the first game he debuted in. You had Zeku, who was linked to Alpha because he was in Guy's Ending in Alpha. You had Manat, who was kind of linked to Alpha with Rose, but also to Street Fighter 5 because she first appeared in Ed's character story. In 5, you had Abigail, who was linked to Final Fight. And then you had Colleen, and Colleen was the character in that season who was linked to Street Fighter 3. And you know, like, I loved that. I loved that it was Colleen and that she was in the game. I think she absolutely deserved it. I've always thought she was a cool character, and it was cool to get a bit more of her and more backstory. And I think she worked really well for, you know, to be in a game that's a prequel to 3. Like, I think that was a good choice, because it helped explore the secret society, it helped explore her links to Gil, and like kind of a bit of Gil's backstory and her relationship with Urien, and kind of like that, it kind of helped expand the rivalry between Gil and Urien. So I think that was a great choice. But reading this, I'm kind of thinking now, like, was Effie supposed to be, you know, that kind of like Street Fighter 3 represented character for that season, for season 2 of 5? But then eventually they were like, this isn't going to work, we can't do a like scrapper. But then it's like, oh, but we still want to do a character that was related to 3, so they eventually decided on Colleen. That's kind of my theory. I think that is a very good chance that was happening. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, and like this was like season 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever, that this was considered, like that Effie was like, hey, maybe we can do Effie, but you know, ultimately didn't work out. I think that's probably the point that makes the most sense to me, is like, in terms like, hey, we think about doing Effie here, but you know, it just didn't work out, so we'll do Colleen instead. Like I said, I think Colleen works better in a prequel to 3, which is what 5 was. I don't know. I think it'd be awkward to do Effie. To kind of, I mean, sorry, not just Effie, but like Effie and Necro, like doing them in a prequel to 3, be kind of odd, because it's kind of a bit up in the air, like going from like, hey, they're free and they're out and about, to they've been kidnapped again at the start of 3, and then they break out again. It's a lot of back and forth. So in that sense, story-wise, I think, you know, not doing Effie was probably a good idea. It's still a shame. I still would have loved to have seen her, and I hope she's playable at some point in the future. And it's cool that, you know, there's confirmation that they actually considered it, because I've seen a lot of people over the years say, like, hey, I would love Effie to be playable. And I would love Effie to be playable. So, you know, it's cool that it's something that isn't, you know, completely out of the question. Like, it's something that could happen in the future. It's a shame, but ultimately, I think it was the right call. I think Colleen was an absolutely great choice. You know, I can't be mad at Colleen making it over Effie. Who would I have liked more? I think I probably would have still stuck with Colleen, because, like I said, I think she just works better. But, you know, Effie would have been great. I really, really hope, you know, they do something with her in the future. And I think, you know, her being in 6, you know, potentially, or 7 or whatever, I think would work better, just, you know, following on from Street Fighter 3 instead of, like, leading up to it. I think that just works better. So yeah, that's pretty much it, you know, that's all I really wanted to talk about. There was some really cool stuff here, some really interesting little tidbits, some stuff that was kind of not really even worth bringing up, like 12 and Dudley, etc. Some stuff that was baffling, like the G stuff and, you know, some of the other stuff, but yeah, overall, that's kind of all I really wanted to talk about. I don't think there was anything like truly, truly major from all of this. I think the two most interesting things, obviously number one is Effie almost being in Street Fighter 5. Like, I think that's a really interesting thing to kind of think about, and, you know, kind of maybe give some clues for the future in terms of, you know, her chances of, you know, being playable. And for the second one, I'd honestly probably go with Cody and Guy being overseas, because I think just in terms of like where potential characters or storylines may go in the future for Street Fighter 6, I think that was the one that stood out to me the most, as like, yeah, this feels like a deliberate kind of like, they're totally open to coming in the future, but they're not coming now, basically. But, you know, we'll see how things go. Obviously, Street Fighter 6 still ongoing. Year 2 still ongoing. The My trailer only came out a couple of days ago, so still got a couple months yet before we get to Elena, and then Year 3 and beyond. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you all for watching, and I shall see you on the next one. Thank you, and goodbye.
We await your return, warrior.